Welcome and to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Hey, folks, I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend, a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and now we're officially into the, well, we call it the Christmas season here, but that's not meant to leave anybody out. Christmas is a national holiday, and we are inclusive here at the EIB network, and so we welcome everybody into our spirit, feeling of joy and goodwill and all of that. It's great to have you here as we kick off a brand new week of broadcast excellence. The telephone number, if you want to be on the program, is 800-282-2882, and the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.s. You know, this tax bill, it actually may happen. I'm beginning to get a sense. I'm beginning to get a feeling that this thing is actually going to happen before Christmas. Trump is on his way to Missouri sometime this week to begin the process of pitching it. Trump is admitting that he's open to some changes, perhaps in the way they do the numbers on the pass-through with regards the reduction in tax rate there. Don't really know details yet, but the point is there's a lot of flexibility that people are engaging in here. And now all the catcalls are coming that Trump doesn't care about any of this. All Trump cares about is a vote in the Senate. He doesn't care about Roy Moore. He doesn't care about anything good or decent. He just wants a vote in the Senate because that's a swipe at Trump for endorsing Roy Moore. Now, Trump is not going to go campaign for Roy Moore in Alabama, but he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to. All he had to do was endorse him, which he did, and that becomes immortalized in Roy Moore's ads. So, I mean, this has got everybody shaken up. This has got the drive-bys, the establishment. They thought they were on the way to dispatching Roy Moore and getting rid of, chipping away at the Senate majority. But what is becoming clear here with all of the news we're getting on Democrats engaging in sexual harassment and the basic mistreatment of women, John Conyers and Al Franken, the Democrats are going out of their way to save both of them. The Democrats and the media actually leading the charge, with the Democrats following along dutifully to save Franken, which I think is good. I keep Franken there. He's a buffoon. He's an idiot. And with Franken there's a consistent, well, what about Al Franken? As long as Franken stays there, then we retain the opportunity to point out the hypocrisy of these people. I think Powerline, it was John Hindrocker, I'm not sure who wrote the endorsement, but made a point, endorsed Roy Moore. And basically made a point, whatever Moore did was 40 years ago. They can't find anything more recently than 40 years ago. Well, 40 years ago is when Teddy Kennedy left Mary Jo Kopechne to die and drown in the abandoned car. 40 years ago is when a couple of other things happened. And, of course, Ted Kennedy was able to live that down and prosper and triumph over it. And then, of course, another salient aspect of endorsing Moore is that the other guy is a Democrat. And media just hates that when that is given as the reason for supporting Moore because his opponent is a Democrat. They try to apply a label of cheap and tawdry and partisan to people who will not denounce Roy Moore and who will, in fact, support him. Now, he doesn't have universal support. Lindsey Grahamnesty and Carly Fiorina, some others, Tim Scott, are suggesting that Moore should get out of the race and not run. But I actually think he's going to win now. You're looking at me like I think there's a good chance Roy Moore can win. I think this is going to upset conventional wisdom big time, and I'm not the only one. Let's go to audio soundbite number 6. Cokie Roberts yesterday on ABC. Well, that's how she says it. Why do you say Cokie Roberts that way? Look, I'm a mimic. I don't, and it's not to make fun of people, it's to be descriptive. Cokie Roberts, ABC News, Washington, while wearing the trench coat in the studio to make it look like she was outside in the rain. Cokie Roberts, ABC News, whatever. She was on ABC's This Week. The round table, the fill-in host was Martha Raddatz. They're talking about Trump saying that Alabamans should not elect Doug Jones because the guy's a horrible Democrat. By the way, Trump's tweet today is laugh out loud, uproariously funny. Have you seen it? We should have a contest as to which of the networks plus CNN and not including Fox is the most dishonest, corrupt, and or distorted in its political coverage of your favorite president, me. They are all bad. Winner to receive the fake news trophy. You know, he just doesn't stop hitting these people. You know, they're trying to claim he doesn't have the right to appoint Mulvaney to the CFPB. And he does. He has total constitutional authority to appoint whoever he wants to the CFPB. The CFPB is a bogus BS bunch of things stuff anyway. It ought to be disbanded. You know, Pocahontas created this, and it's ostensibly to guard against the rip-off tactics of banks and lending institutions and financial institutions who, like every other American corporation, either want to kill their customers or cause their customers to go broke or cause their customers to lose their homes or cause their customers to destroy the planet. And so Pocahontas comes up with this thing. And, of course, the Congress rushes to support it and enact it because it happened at a time when there was some financial malfeasance somewhere. And it's made to look like it was everywhere and omnipresent. But Trump has a total authority, constitutional and otherwise, as the head honcho of the executive branch to put in charge of it whoever he wants. And, of course, the Chihuahuas are nipping at the ankles again, trying to say he shouldn't and couldn't, but he can. And I'll go through it. You know, I got another note also from somebody who said, you've explained net neutrality three times, but I think you better do it again because, man, now they're protesting at Ajit Pai's house. Now, he's the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, and they're protesting at his house. And, of course, they've got all of the millennials and all the tech bloggers are all caught up in this, believing that net neutrality is equality and fairness and sameness and does not allow the evil cable companies and the evil internet service providers to gouge you and to overcharge you. And nothing could be further from the truth. I had a great interview with Professor Thomas Hazlett, my friend from the old Sacramento days, who has written a book. I would really recommend, and I've recommended it 2 or 3 times, his book, The Political Spectrum, Thomas W. Hazlett. In fact, it's written for laymen in its verbiage, thereby easy to understand, and it's a history of the regulation of the telecommunications industry. And what it demonstrates, and he was great in the interview to Limbaugh letter, but I'm going to excerpt some of it here during the program today. He's just excellent in pointing out the history of regulation of the entire spectrum, wireless, FM, AM, television, police band, air traffic control, you name it. The regulation retarded. Do you realize that we could have had cellular communications in the 50s? FM radio was delayed 20 years because of the power of AM broadcasters to shelve it, influencing regulators. The history of the telecommunications industry is the history of regulating it and impeding it. And net neutrality is an often used misnamed term that's designed to make everybody think that no one user, no one provider, no one company will have any more access to the internet than any other. And there's one of the best analogies I could give you on this. And I'm going to get back to Roy Moore in a minute. I never lose my place. The pro-net neutrality people have come up with analogies to try to help people understand what they think they're trying to propose. And they use Federal Express and Amazon as their illustration. And they say FedEx delivers Amazon's packages and they're all treated the same. No package gets any preferential treatment. FedEx gets the packages, they deliver them. Nothing could be further from the truth. Whether you're talking about Amazon or Schmamazon, you can choose your delivery speed. You can choose how many days, weeks. You can choose the kind of delivery you want. Do you want ground? Do you care if it doesn't take a month? Do you want it tomorrow? Do you want it in 2 days? All of that depends on how much you are willing to pay. And the providers of both retail products and those who deliver them will accept any form of payment based on the services they offer to give you that package when you want it. If you want to pay the least, then you can buy FedEx ground or UPS ground or whatever and have it delivered in 3 weeks. If you want to pay, you can have it delivered the next day. If you want to pay a little less than that, you can have it paid or have it arrive in 2 days. There's all kinds of flexibility, and it's based on what people are willing to pay. All packages are not treated the same. All Amazon, all FedEx, all UPS packages are not treated the same. And these people, I can't believe they use this as an example because it's so easily blown to smithereens. Well, instead of Amazon, think of Amazon as your internet service provider. And instead of FedEx, think of the internet itself as delivering the product. And if you want the fastest internet, you can go out and ask if your provider provides gigabit Ethernet. And if he does, and you find out what it costs and you want to buy it, then you damn well expect that your download speeds are going to be gigabit Ethernet. You're paying for it. If you don't care how fast your internet speeds are, you can go El Cheapo. And see, this is the real rub. What the tech bloggers and the left don't like is that there are options and that there is a freedom in the marketplace and that people can choose superior service if they're willing to pay for it. And if somebody's willing to pay for superior service, the providers had better provide it. But if everybody's treated the same, the only way everybody can be treated the same is if there is a massive regulatory agency that is watching and controlling and inspecting virtually every aspect of the internet every day. And they're looking for violators because they want to punish them. It is impossible for there to be sameness and equality when it comes to the transfer of data, for example, over the internet, which is what we're talking about here. But there are other mass forms of communication, too, that would come into effect. But it's typical of the left. If you want the government running the internet, if you want the government policing and in charge of every aspect of the internet, then by golly, by gosh, support net neutrality. Net neutrality is misnamed. There's nothing neutral about it. The government controls it. The government regulates it. If you like government regulation, if you like how government regulation retards things, slows things down, gums things up, causes mistakes to be made, then by all means support net neutrality. It does not mean that certain people are going to be given preferential treatment. It means that you will be able to buy whatever service you want and the provider will provide it. And if the provider doesn't provide what you're paying for, then you have recourse to cancel, get out of it, go somewhere else. It is regulation that would turn the internet. Look, the internet has grown like wild, and it has grown precisely because it has not been regulated. It really isn't a complicated thing at all. What complicates this is another misnamed political project, net neutrality. I mean, who could be opposed to neutrality? That means nobody is given any preferential treatment. Isn't that what we're all about? Nobody's special. Nobody gets anything better or faster than anybody else. And that's what we call fairness. And that's what we call equality. And that's what we call happiness. And that's what we call sustainability and whatever other cockamamie thing we use to describe it. But it isn't the real world. How about the government regulating airline travel speeds? Yep, we're only going to allow jets to fly 300 miles an hour because some people can't afford to fly at 700 miles an hour or 6. I mean, the whole thing is the people that are in charge of promoting, ridding the telecommunications industry of these Obama era rules. Would you like to know what the net neutrality, what it's based on? It's based on something called Title II, U.S. Code Title II, 1934 telecommunications law. There wasn't an internet in 1934. There wasn't television commercially available in 1934. And yet that's the series of regulations and laws that Obama put in place to have them apply to modern day communications technology. And it's absurd. And the reason Obama and the Democrats and the left is all for it is precisely because it puts a government in charge of it. The government regulates it. And I'm going to give you some examples today, Professor Hazlett, from his interview. You'll be stunned at the slow pace of technological innovation because of regulation. The Internet, remember when it first started, when people really, really got into it? And I'm talking about being able to browse websites. The first browser was Mosaic, then Netscape came along with theirs. And everything was free. Newspapers published websites with the exact content of their published editions and more. Everything came online. Everything, data and information began added, and nobody was charging anything for it, which was their big mistake. They created the idea that if it's on the Internet, it's free. Now they're having to charge for it, put things behind paywalls. They're having trouble because of so many years. But the point is, it wasn't regulated. And look how fast it grew. And look how fast the tech improved. And look how widespread available it became. And when it became so powerful, when it became so widespread, when it became of age and had demonstrable influence, that's when the left wants to get their grubby, crusty paws on it and start regulating it for their political benefit. It's not about your provider shutting down data speeds to you while speeding them up for some corporate customer. If you want to pay for it, you'll be able to get it, just like in anything else in a free market. And if you can't afford what you want now, you work harder, and maybe someday you will be able to. But there's always going to be an option until the government gets it. I got to take a break here, folks, a little long. Be back in a minute. Don't go away. Okay, here's the Cokie Roberts soundbite. ABC's This Week, Martha Raddatz, President Trump just tweeting again, saying, I endorsed Luther Strange in the primary. He shot way up in the polls and it wasn't enough. Can't let Schumer Pelosi win this race. The liberal Jones will be bad. He doesn't mention Roy Moore by name in either of these two tweets, but it sounds like he may be going to Alabama, clearly supporting Moore. What do you think about this, Cokie?
It's just Doug Jones and Pelosi and Schumer. But he is clearly...
But he doesn't have to.
He doesn't have to, and he also doesn't have to go to Alabama. He's done plenty for Roy Moore now, and Roy Moore can put it all in his ads, which he's doing. And he's clearly got the endorsement of President Trump. And without the endorsement of President Trump, he won the primary. I think with the endorsement of President Trump, it's going to be very hard to defeat him in the general election.
Now, stop and think about that for a second. With the endorsement of Trump, he wins. That flies in the face of what the drive-bys are telling us about Trump and Moore. If you listen to them, Trump's endorsement ought to kill Trump and Moore, not help either one, right? Having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. Rush Limbaugh, the EIB network. We had a great Thanksgiving weekend. I flew to St. Louis on Thanksgiving Day. The family had dinner there together. There were 25 of us that were able to assemble this year. And then after dinner, flew back Thanksgiving night, had golf and other things the next day. And then Saturday was back to Missouri because my niece, Kristen, is engaged, and the engagement party was Saturday night in our hometown, Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And Cape Girardeau is, when I was growing up, you know what it looked like at Christmas? Have you seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart and the gang? Remember whatever the name of that town was, the Christmas decorations that were on the street posts across the street with the stars and the angels. Now, that's what Broadway was when I was growing up at Cape Girardeau. Cape Girardeau looked just like the town in, what was the name of it? It's a Wonderful Life. I'm having a mental block. Something Falls, Millbrook Falls or something. At any rate, they had similar type decorations up on Saturday night, even though they've been modernized. But it was, 200 people showed up. Bedford Falls, that's what it was, Bedford Falls. Anytime I watch It's a Wonderful Life, I think of my hometown when watching it. And I do not get tired of watching it. In fact, I love Christmas movies that tug your heart and cause you to cry. I love those things, the Hallmark type stuff. And you know why? You know why I love those things? Because they are a link to a wholesome, decent culture that has not been corrupted or polluted by anything. It's not a desire to skip back in time. It's just a remembrance of what the anchors of our culture and society used to be. And I don't watch those old Christmas movies and get snarky about it. I look at them and I enjoy them for because they were, at one time, that was America. And at one time, that's what America was. And at one time, they made movies that reflected what America was rather than preached to America about what it should be or what they don't like about it, which is what happens now. Anyway, there were 200 people showed up. They set up a smoking section for me in this place. It was about 50 degrees out, and I was willing to go outside. Perfectly willing. I was perfectly comfortable out there. But they, no, you got to come in. So they set up a little smoking section for me inside the. It's a place called Celebrations. It's not a restaurant. It's the gigantic room with a couple bars, little dining rooms that you can rent for private parties and stuff. And me being a powerful, influential member. Now, I shouldn't have mentioned the name. Now this place is going to get beat up on Twitter like you. Well, they'll get business, but anyway, they set up a smoking section for me. It was right outside the kitchen. And people walked back, said hello. Some of these people I had not seen in 40 years, even though I'd been back. But it was this party that got everybody. It was fun. It was fun. And there were relatives of some of the old townies that I had not met. It was a 2 or 3 hour thing, heavy hors d'oeuvres. Wine and beer. The cash bar was if you had to pay if you wanted. My brother went cheap. You had to pay if you wanted adult beverages. And no, it was it's a way of limiting the consumption of adult beverages, the cash bar. He didn't go cheap. That's just typical familial humor. But I finished that, and my cousin Steve and Marsh drove me out the airport, and I got back about 2 o'clock Sunday morning, got up, played golf. And thought about watching the Steelers last night. And I did. I watched, all told, maybe a quarter. Well, I have to admit it. I can't sit here and say, that I didn't watch it. But, boy, the numbers on the NFL ratings are continuing. Do you know what Kaepernick did on Thanksgiving? You didn't hear about this? Kaepernick, who the sports media is still hell-bent on having a team hire. Kaepernick went to Alcatraz with the Native Americans to protest the unthanksgiving. It's what it's called, the unthanksgiving, because the Native Americans once commandeered the place and took it over, after they had closed it as a prison. Native Americans rode out there. I don't know what they did, but they took over Alcatraz. Anyway, they have an annual unthanksgiving celebration, and Kaepernick was out there headlining this. And the sports drive-bys are still suggesting that an NFL team hire the guy. Anyway, the ratings, and I hate saying it. I don't say this with any pleasure. Don't misunderstand the tone in my voice. I'm sad about this. This is another, the NFL and watching football. You who have been listening here a long time know how much I loved it. But it's not possible to love it the same now because of what was that? The Raiders are not going to. Oh, the ratings. Oh, Snerdley is saying the ratings. The reason I can't understand you is because we don't have a microphone. You sound like the guy at the drive-in restaurant. You can't understand what the guy in the car is saying, whatever. You say Goodell is the reason the ratings are not going to come back till Goodell is gone. Well, they're not going to get rid of Goodell. He's getting ready to renew him. 4 years at $40 million per. That's the salary number. I don't know what some of the perks are. At any rate, I did watch a quarter of the game last night, and it was I watched the fourth quarter, and then I started getting busy with show prep. Yeah, they won. The last second field goal, 53 yards, tied a record for the longest field goal in Heinz Field. And they beat the Packers, but it was a narrow. They should have creamed the Packers. They were 14-point favorites. The Steelers played down to their opponent. They ought to be wiping the board with 5 and 6 teams, but they barely eke out 5 and 3-point wins over these teams. At any rate, it was a great weekend, and we had a bunch of fun experience. It was go, 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 go. Now we're back in the saddle. Before I get to the phones and back onto the sexual harassment stuff with Conyers and Franken and the major hypocrisy, I can't believe, well, I say I can't believe, I actually can. The Democrats are stepping in it big time here, and I actually, their hubris and arrogance is telling them that they can get away with this, and they are misjudging this. But before we got sound bites from people on this and the details, I just want to give you one example here to go along with the net neutrality discussion or explanation that I offered in the first half hour of the program. The left is pushing net neutrality because they want the government to regulate the Internet on the premise that the private sector is mean, it's unfair, it overcharges, it kills its customers, it puts its customers at risk. All of the typical bromides you get from the left. So they want the government regulating it just like they want the government regulating health care. If you like Obamacare, if you like the government in charge of all that they're in charge of, then you ought to welcome net neutrality. But I'm telling you, if you like being able to purchase what you want when you want it, if you like technological innovation, if you want things continuing to improve and innovate, modernize, and get cheaper along the way, then you must oppose net neutrality. It's misnamed. It has nothing to do with what the left actually wants. And I'm going to give you an example of government regulation retarding and practically stopping technological innovation. The example I'm going to use comes from Professor Hazlett's book, and it's about cellular. Think back, your own life. When is your first memory of either seeing a cell phone or actually having one? I'll tell you mine. It was 1985 or 86, and I was in Sacramento. I was a Sacramento Kings basketball game. And I forget the cell provider that we had back then, but the sponsor, and I happened to run into this guy, and he was telling me about the latest thing, cellular phones, and he had one with him. And he was able to call whoever he wanted. I was able to hear it, make the call. I was dazzled. I said, no kidding. The thing is, he had this giant brick in his pocket that was the battery. And he said he had another battery that was in his car. And I said, well, how long does this last? He said, well, you really shouldn't use it when it's not attached to the battery, but I can get some time. But he just wanted to demo it. Wasn't even on the market yet. He was just demoing this for me. I said, man, I got to have one of these. I got to have it. What I didn't know, and this was 1985 or 86, folks, cellular telephone communications, cellular communications technology was announced by the FCC in 1945. There was an article in the Saturday Evening Post. 1945, the big announcement of the invention, discovery, whatever you want to call it, of cellular technology, which uses, of course, wireless spectrum, radio frequencies. It took until the 1980s for the government to license operators to use cellular communications. AM radio stations are licensed. Television stations are licensed by the FCC. And the owners and operators of those stations have to pass every 5 or 10 years, I don't know what it is now, a license renewal exam, basically on how well they're serving the community and blah, blah. It's almost become pro forma now. But the point is, the government's in charge of it, licensing. So the inventors of cellular couldn't do anything with it until the government licensed it. And the minute it was discovered, all other forms of communication, particularly landline telephones, began pressuring the government and regulators to squash it. They didn't want the competition. This is not unnatural. It's the same thing that happened to FM radio. FM radio was invented 25 years before the first FM radio was sold. A consortium of AM radio station owners put pressure on the federal government to shelve the entire FM technology, which it did. Lobbyists and people of influence, the special interests in communication, succeeded in burying two innovative forms of communication technology to the benefit of current or at the time operators, which in these cases were AM radio and landline telephones. But wait, there's more after this. We'll get to the phones here just shortly, but I want to give you the bare essential details of the cellular story just to understand what can happen when the government starts regulating the Internet. It's trying to even now, and they want to get their entire mitts. Well, this government doesn't. The left wants to. This is Trump getting rid of what Obama was trying. This is Trump and Ajit Pai at the FCC getting rid of the first planted roots, if you will, of the blossoms that would lead to government regulation and control of the Internet. So, cellular announced by the FCC in 1945. It didn't hit the market till 1985. It was 40 years, the commercial market. Now, when the cellular technology finally got out, it's just amazing what happened. Cellular was never thought by the regulators, by the government people in charge. It was never thought to be mass market. It was thought to be for walkie-talkies in the military and law enforcement. But the regulators never thought it would have mass market application. The FCC assumed that cellular would be a plaything for the rich. They'd be very limited. In 1980, a McKinsey & Company study commissioned by AT&T said that there would be fewer than 1 million wireless subscribers in the U.S. by the year 2000. And this study by McKinsey was used to suppress the technology and keep it from the market. Well, by the year 2000, there were over 109 million wireless subscribers. Well more than the fewer than 1 million that AT&T predicted. So that's what the old Ma Bell monopoly, AT&T, thought that it was not going to have popular applications, something strictly for the rich, and that's what the old regulators thought. So they went very slow. When this wireless technology was finally unleashed, it became obvious the market was far too complex for regulators to manage. At the same time, the regulators did not have the interest in managing cellular where people talk to one another. They wanted to control broadcasting, which is commercial, and where there is money changing hands, where one broadcasts and one listens. But with person-to-person communications, they didn't see any value in that. And they certainly, they thought that had already been handled with landline phones, and that's all there was ever going to be needed. And if you needed in-the-air communications for airplanes and things like that, that already existed. But person-to-person, they weren't even thinking about consumers. By the 1980s, there was beginning to be serious deregulation, not just in the U.S., but around the world. And with deregulation came competition, and that's when cellular finally hit the marketplace, when it was deregulated, when the regulators figured there's no reason for us to police this because nobody's going to want it. Bureaucrats are not visionaries. Barack Obama and his merry band of bureaucrats are not visionaries. They're pessimists. They deter new ideas. It is said that we conservatives are the ones that don't innovate and don't modernize, that we want to conserve the old-fashioned ways. Wrong-o! It is the left that deters new ideas, particularly innovative technological ideas. I'm talking about not the inventors. I'm talking about liberal government regulators who exist to protect existing industries. Because you know who really is purchased when a new technology comes is members of Congress. They're the first people that are bought. And if you want that to continue to grow, if you want Obamaism to be in charge of what you can and can't do and where you can and can't do it and how much you can or can't pay for it on the internet, then by all means support net neutrality. But it isn't neutral. It isn't innovative. It isn't creative, and it's going to end up being expensive as hell for mediocrity. Back after this. Well, looky here. Al Franken has a live press conference starting here in mere moments. Thankfully, we will be in a commercial break. Huffington Puffington Post says that Leanne Tweeden, the woman Franklin harassed on the USA tour, she was asking for it. He's not to blame. We'll be back. I can't believe I'm saying this. We're still waiting on Al Franken. I've done an informal survey of the audience, folks, and it seems that many of you are curious to hear what Stuart Smalley might have to say here. He's supposed to start a press conference about 6 minutes ago, obviously running late in the Obama-Clinton style. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program today. Is Cyber Monday a holiday? Did we get suckered into working here today? Well, I keep reading about Cyber Monday versus Black Friday. I know Black Friday, the busiest shopping day of the year traditionally, but Cyber Monday is picking up speed as a rival shopping day. But it's not a holiday, is it? I'm just checking. You never know. In the Trump economy, things are going so well that shopping days become holidays. At any rate, folks, great to have you here. If you want to send an email, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Now, why would Franken be doing this? Up till now, it has become clear that Franken's going to try to weather the storm. He has not admitted, or he's not copped to it. He said he's sorry that he's learned. I get so worn out. These people insult our intelligence. I have learned that when hugging a woman, it's not really correct to grab her breast. I'm glad to know this now at age 84, whatever I am, and I appreciate this very, very learnable opportunity. Well, who's kidding who here? As though Franken's unaware that copping a feel here or there is somehow okay, and only now at this stage in his life is he learning that it may be inappropriate. Speaking of all this, by the way, in the stack today I have a piece by Christina Hoff Sommers, who is she's written against the extremes of militant feminism, and she's extremely correct in her extreme criticisms of extreme feminism. She has a piece today, however, that she's worried there's an overreaction to all of this, and that certain interactions between men and women, which are perfectly harmless and innocent and consensual, are going to be now considered harassment or abuse because our culture has a tendency to way overreact to everything because of fear of the media, fear of political correctness. and a lack of courage to stand up and proclaim common sense. And she worries that all of this is going to end up having an adverse effect on the overall interaction and relationships, normal relationships and normal interactions between men and women, which are all part of the mating, courting, socialization status or apparatus of people getting to know each other, and that it's going to lead to a lack of interaction, people afraid to speak with one another in any way, shape, manner, or form, that it's going to potentially lead to people segregating themselves from members of the opposite sex as the only safe way to go. And the more that happens, the more segregation there is, the more people going it alone. Then whenever there is interaction between a man and a woman and somebody gets unhappy about it, then it's going to be even worse than the allegations today. And I understand the point. I understand it to a T, in fact. We do have this tendency to overreact. If you look at it as the perpetual motion ball, it reacts and keeps going in opposite directions after it hits something and goes back. The rebound time here is way past what's considered normal. And it can have an adverse effect. And, of course, this is desired by some who are basically unhappy anyway with their lot in life and want to spread their misery around by politicizing as much as they can. Now, if Franken's doing this because he thinks there aren't going to be any more women coming forward, then he'll come out here and say it's over and he's sorry and whatever he says to try to put it behind him, so to speak, so that he can continue. If that's not the reason he's doing that, I mean, what other reason could there be? Could there be other women on the verge of coming forward and he needs to head them off at the pass? Or perhaps what he knows is coming is so bad that it can't be survivable that he's going to resign? No, you don't think that. You don't care what it is, he's not resigning. The thing about the Democrats on this, when this first happened, I thought this was pretty much going to be automatic, that Franken has to go, because it's a governor in Minnesota that would replace him. So they don't lose anything if Franken goes. With Franken staying, it does give them a bit of a problem. If they want to keep going after people like Roy Moore or Trump, while they are supporting Conyers and Franken and whoever else in elective politics is revealed to be one of these kind of guys, it's going to be an ongoing problem for them. They must not fear the hypocrisy. The Democrats, I don't think, worry about the hypocrisy at all because with the media on their side, it never sticks to them. But then there's another factor that I saw over the weekend, and I was in stunned silence. There are apparently a significant number of Democrats who really think this guy has a legitimate chance at getting the Democrat presidential nomination, and that's why they want to save him. Al Franken, I'm telling you, if that's, and these people are thinking, well, just like Al Franken, these people said, Donald Trump? You kidding me? Donald Trump? Just like we're saying, Al Franken? You kidding me? Al Franken? But there are some people who think that he could win it. Now, the front runner for the Democrat nomination as we sit here today, do not doubt me on this, is Bernie Sanders. What, you're disagreeing with me, or you don't believe? You think I'm? Well, believe it. Because the Democrat Party is no more the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is the party of American communism. And if you look at what Bernie Sanders stands for, where did Bernie Sanders honeymoon? Moscow. Bernie Sanders sidles up to the traditional enemies of this country. And Bernie Sanders is the most popular right now Democratic presidential candidate in the Democrat Party. It isn't Joe Bite Me, and it isn't Al Franken, and it isn't Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren, and it's not Kamala Harris. It is Bernie Sanders. And it's not even close. Bernie Sanders, hands down. This is why I think Donna Brazile is trying to sweep the Clintons off the stage to pave the way for Michelle Obama. Because I think the parts of the Democrat Party that have just totally not gone over to full-fledged communism, these are the faux communists. And that would be the Obama era, the Obama crowd, as popularized by Brazile. I think they believe that somebody like Michelle Maybelle Obama is the only person that can stop Bernie Sanders. Now, I imagine that there are many people listening to this right now. Bernie Sanders, Rush, are you losing it? You're crazy. I'm not. When I ran across the stuff that made me realize this, I had the same reaction you're having. Bernie Sanders, isn't it over? Isn't it been there, done that? No. I'll give you an example, and don't flinch at this either. Susan Sarandon, I know, Hollywood actress, brain dead, all the other. Have you heard what she has been saying lately? She has been denigrating Hillary Clinton like we do. That it would have been a disaster if Hillary Clinton had been elected. We would be at war, and she went on to just trash Hillary and the Clintons and all this other stuff. And she's clearly, she voted for Jill Stein. She wasn't a big fan of Barack Obama, but I think she would be part of the crowd that might gravitate toward Michelle Obama. Believe me, there is a segment, I don't know how big it is, but it's not small, in the Democrat Party that wants an Obama back in. And they're not particularly fond of Hillary, and they don't want Bernie Sanders. The Democrat Party is, and you have trouble believing this because the Democrat Party is seen as the media. And the media seems in total control of what they're doing. The media seems to survive every scandal that involves, like Charlie Rose, no big deal. People still watch CBS, even though Charlie Rose worked there. So, and Charlie Rose is losing all of his honorary degrees. What a phony operation that is, too. All these phony degrees handed out to these phony baloney plastic banana good time rock and rollers to show you how meaningful they are. Look at what they take them away at the first sign of trouble. So Charlie's losing all of his honorary degrees, but the media just keeps on trucking. And the media creates an image and picture of the Democrat Party as solid, as unified, purposeful, not in any trouble whatsoever, that they are on the cusp of getting rid of Trump. They're on the cusp of winning in 2018, the House and the Senate. They're going to take Congress back. Then they're going to win the White House in 2020. If you have a steady diet of the drive-by media, that is the image that is projected that people are absorbing day in and day out. But the truth of the matter is the Democrat Party is in big trouble. They are continuing to lose elections. And just even though they won a special election here, not the special, they won the Virginia governorship. That election is now being interpreted as the Democrats are back. And the Democrats are loaded for, and the American people want the Democrats back. And the American people feel bad they didn't elect the Democrats in 2016. The American people feel bad they've been voting against Democrats since 2014. One election now is being presented as people realize their mistake in voting for Trump. They realize their error in allowing the Russians to influence the election. The American people desperate to forget their mistake and desperate to wish and get the Democrat Party back. That's the image that projected. But they're in heap big doo-doo. And they remain in heap big doo-doo because the Democrat Party is actively positioned in such a way that you're not out of bounds if you characterize much of what they're doing and many of them as anti or untraditional American. And it's been creeping this way for a while. Here's Stuart now. Stuart's just shown up. We have time for a couple minutes here. That might tell us what this is about. So our cameras and microphones are there.
People of Minnesota,
right?
My colleagues.
This is so painful.
Staff,
I hate having to do this, but
my supporters, and everyone who has counted on me to be a champion for women. All of you, I just want to again say I am sorry.
Champion.
I know there are no magic words that I can say to regain your trust, and I know that's going to take time. I'm ready to start that process, and it starts with going back to work today. So now I'm going to take a few questions.
Are you?
Sam.
Yeah. You said in response to some of these allegations that you remember these encounters differently.
Can you hear these questions? Can you?
Specifically, does your recollection of these events differ from the way that you came forward? And to what extent are you denying your accounts of what happened?
Well, there are different, different allegations. There's the Leanne Tweeden. Leanne and I were on the USO tour together.
We know
and on the Kiss at the
your
rehearsal,
hands were all over her on the
tour
tour
for a sketch. I said that I recall that differently from Leanne, but I feel that you have to respect, women's experience, and so I apologized to her, and I meant it, and I was. Very grateful that she accepted it. As far as, I take a lot of pictures in Minnesota, thousands of pictures, meet tens of thousands of people. So those are instances that I do not remember. It has, from these stories...
Right, like at the Pig on a Stick exhibit at the State Fair, right?
Some women, and one is too many, who feel that I have done something disrespectful and that's hurt them, and for that I am tremendously sorry.
Well,
and
it's obvious what the heck this has been.
Going to have to be much more conscious.
You know what? While you listen to this, I'm going to see if Apple's release a new beta today. That way I will not be wasting my time.
Much more careful, much more sensitive.
No new beta.
And that this that this will not happen again going forward.
BS won't happen again. Probably still is happening.
It's a long time for me to regain people's trust, but I hope that starting work today that I can start to do that. Casey.
You made it clear you're not going to resign your Senate seat. There have been a lot of accusations against a lot of people that have been in the conversation lately. In your view,
okay, this is it. After this answer, we're going to get out of this. This is
what kind of behavior?
We've been played here.
I'm not going to get into that or speculate on that. And I'm certainly not going to talk to anybody else. This is what I've been trying to do. I've been trying to take responsibility.
No, you
by
haven't.
Apologizing. And by apologizing to the people I've let down. And I'm going to work to regain their trust. I am going to be accountable. We are going to cooperate completely with the ethics investigation.
Will you make the findings of the ethics investigation public?
I will be open to that. That's going to be, of course, I've not worked with the ethics committee before, and I don't quite know how that works, but I'm certainly open to that. And I also, I'm going to try to learn from my mistakes.
So here we go.
And
I didn't know that you weren't supposed to grab a woman's butt during a photo op.
Doing a lot of reflecting, and I want to be someone who adds something to this conversation. And I hope I can do that.
You can't.
Yeah, MJ, okay.
Yesterday you were unable to answer the question of whether more women would be coming out with allegations. It does seem that that's a question that only you can answer. What is the reason, can you tell us, that you can't definitively say that more
Okay,
women
well, that's
not...
it. Look, we got to, folks, we have to go to a commercial break here, which will be infinitely more interesting than what we just heard. Well, this is basically an up yours press conference. Screw you. And he just wanted to say it in front of cameras and microphones instead of a statement. But I'm going to tell you how much of an act this was. This guy, for whatever else he is a 40-year veteran, being on TV and in movies and so forth, and he does not speak like he spoke in this thing. He's trying to act contrite and trying to act sorry and thoughtful, and the whole thing is an act. But its purpose was to shut down any of his talk that he's going anywhere, no matter what happens next, no matter who next, if there's any next, he's not going anywhere. And there was nothing new here. He's mentioned this in statements to Minnesota media and so forth. So this was it was a performance designed to create this image of contrition and contemplation and serious consideration of how to behave in the future and all that. It's pure caca, if you ask me. And we're back. Great to have you with us, Rush Limbaugh. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. And I got to get to the phones. People have been patiently waiting for a while. We'll start with Matt in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Hi. Great to have you here, sir.
Hey, Rush. Thanks for having me on. How's it going?
I'm doing great.
Very good. Hey, I won't take a whole lot of time because you already had most of the points straight out correct, which kind of upsets me when I see all these things going around the internet with net neutrality and everybody saying we have to keep it. So I thank you for getting the information out there. I run a small regional ISP, so we compete directly with the cable companies, directly with the internet companies.
All right, wait. Forget what you said about not taking up much time, because I'm going to use you here as an opportunity for people to understand what goes on. You are a regional ISP. People may not even know what that is. Internet service provider. Regional. You said that you are not. You do compete directly with the big guys, the cable companies. So tell everybody, what do you do? What is a regional ISP? Who are your customers?
Okay, so our customers are ones that, for whatever reason, have decided they don't want to go with the cable company or the phone company. A lot of times it's the cord cutters, because we focus on one thing and one thing only and do it well, and that's internet service. So we don't bundle TV, we don't bundle phone, and that's just our business model at the moment. Some regional internet providers do. We've just decided not to. But our
okay, now just wait, hang with me here. I'm going to assume here that there's some people that still don't know what you do. So you provide, forgive the term, you'll understand what I'm saying here. You provide the Wi-Fi for people in their home, right?
Correct. We are a replacement to any of the big name companies that you can go to out there. We provide through our own network that we build the internet service to somebody's house that they can plug their Wi-Fi router into or get the Wi-Fi.
Are you not sharing wires in the neighborhood with the cable companies? You're not sharing cable? You run your own cable?
Correct. So in our case, we have a hybrid network. We've got some fiber optic line, and then we also do wireless. So we've got towers all around town. We've got equipment on there, and we basically terrestrially connect customers through.
Why did you decide to do this as a business? Why did you want to compete against these people that can lower their prices because they have so many customers? Why did you want to do this?
Because they don't. So we see, and every day I sit here in the office when I'm in the office, and I hear people taking phone calls on our sales lines. And it's just the same thing over and over and over, which is we want to get away from the big company X because our bill just keeps going up every month. And so people are upset with the poor customer service. They're upset with their bills going up, with their bills not being consistent every month, and it not being a local company. And so that's the niche that we fill.
So are you making money?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We make very good money. We employ 5 people here, so we're providing business and employment to the local community.
So you're Williamsport, Pennsylvania. How many customers do you have?
Just north of about 1,500.
And how many more would you like to have?
So I don't know the answer to that question. It's something I've thought about often.
Because there's a limit, right? I mean, you're up against the big boys who are already running television cable or other forms of TV into their houses, and you don't provide that. So there has to be a ceiling on the number of customers you can have, so that has to affect your business plan.
There is, but what affects it more is I want to make sure that however big we may grow, we don't stop providing good local customer service to our customers.
And what is good customer service for your customers? They never drop coverage. Your coverage is always there, rain or shine. What is good customer service for you?
So certainly that can differ by who the customer is. But in my opinion, good customer service is you call in if you have an issue, which certainly that comes up even with us, and you talk to somebody who knows what they're knows what they're doing. They're not in a call center someplace just reading a script. And then hopefully we can get out to you within a couple of hours and get your issue resolved. If you call in with a billing issue, we get it resolved right away. We're not encumbered by layers of management and procedures and scripts that need to be followed.
Okay, so why are you opposed to so-called net neutrality?
So on the face of things, net neutrality sounds really good. It makes sure we get access to Netflix and cat videos and all kinds of things that people like on the internet. But as you had said, before, it's government encumberment. And if you look back at things like the telephone, there's something called a USF, or a Universal Service Fund, as well as a ton of other taxes that are on your telephone bill. We don't have any of those on internet currently. However, if the internet continues
they want to apply those Title II regulations to the phone service from 1937 to internet service today, and they want to be able to charge for the same things that rural telephone service, now rural internet service. Everybody pays, so those people get it for nothing.
Correct. So if we continue down the Title II rabbit hole with net neutrality and the government intervention in the internet, eventually you're going to see these taxes and your bills going up from all of these USF funds and other federal funds.
But you would lose the ability to be price competitive with your competitors, correct?
No, not at all. We are privately funded. We have never taken a dollar.
No, with net neutrality, you would be. You would be forced to be raising your prices.
Correct. Yes, we would have to put taxes on there. We would have to raise the prices. We'd have taxes that potentially would change from month to month. And so people would be back to complaining about surcharges and taxes on their bill, even with us.
The way I appreciate your answering my questions. Here's I got 1,500 customers in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And net neutrality, so-called, would force him to abide by Title II federal regulations, which is Title II dates back to the 1930s. It was how the phone companies, the Ma Bell and the original landline phone apparatus was regulated by the federal government. But the key to it is not 1937. It's federal government. Title II allows federal government total regulatory control over the internet, which they don't have now. What they're starting to, because Obama began the initiation of so-called net neutrality rules. But he mentioned Netflix. This is a good example of how the pro-net neutrality people have everybody scared. As you know, Netflix is if it's not the most popular, it's on its way to being the most popular provider of television programming, video from movies, TV shows, you name it, for people that don't have to subscribe to a cable company or a satellite service or what have you. And the pro so-called net neutrality people have got these customers scared to death that Netflix is going to somehow be throttled, that the phone companies will come in and the other ISPs, Comcast, AT&T, you name it, will be allowed to throttle Netflix's speeds so that you will not be able to watch as smoothly, as conveniently, with as good download speeds and so forth. And they try to threaten people. The thing they like most will be damaged, will be taken away from them. And then they add to it, but not for everybody, because the rich will be able to pay Netflix for a special wire, a special cable, special high-speed service, whereas you can't. And then Netflix will be only concerned with their high-paying customers and won't care about average middle-class customers. All of this is just scare tactic BS. It's not in Netflix's best interest for any of that to happen. Now, you might say, but Rush, Netflix signed on for it. Of course. They also signed on to global warming. They're all scared to death of a highly powerful regulatory federal government. Of course they sign on to climate change. Of course they sign on to all this stuff. And if they think customers are signing on to it, they'll do that too. I mean, if Company X thinks that most of its customers believe in climate change, then Company X is going to start making their customers believe they care about it too. And there will be climate change specials and climate change promotions and climate change consciousness in advertising. The whole thing is a racket. But it's a scare tactic meant to frighten people into believing that the monthly rate they pay will not be enough to get decent enough download speeds to be able to watch video that doesn't buffer or get interrupted. And that's not at all what any of this is about. It is net neutrality and the federal government regulating that would determine who gets what when by virtue of the regulation. And the evidence of regulation in any industry is clear for anybody to see. But in the telecommunications business especially, the innovative technology that's been stifled by decades, such as FM radio or cellular technology, and those are just two examples. Anyway, I appreciate the call. Matt, got to take a quick time out again, folks, but we've got more right after this, so don't go away. Here's Mike in Kingsport, Tennessee. Back to the phones we go. Great to have you, sir. How are you doing?
Hey, Rush, thanks. How are you today?
Pretty good. Pretty good, all things considered.
Got a quick question. Hey, does Al Franken, being a comedian or a former comedian, does that more or less give him a pass in the eyes of the Democrat for all this mess up?
No, being a Democrat does. Why would you think being a comedian gives him a pass?
Well,
Al Franken hasn't been funny in 40 years.
Well, but I don't know, maybe with the millennials, maybe looking back on like the SNL fame and things like that, maybe that just lets them or allows them to just sweep this under the rug and say, oh, well, that's just him being funny and trying to be funny and move on from there.
I spent a lot of time studying millennials. Now, I have to do it from afar because I don't have any. So I do it in a scholarly way, and I do it in an academic way, if you will. And I just have to tell you, I'm not confident yet that I could answer every question about millennial attitudes on society, culture, and politics correctly. But my take is that somebody like Al Franken is not seen as admirable and sincere and cool and hip by today's millennials. And this is where I think the Democrats are missing the boat. I think Franken is seen in, frankly, an opposite way. I don't think there's any desire on the part of millennials to protect Franken. I know what you're getting at. He's a comedian, therefore he's in entertainment, therefore he's a celebrity, therefore he's a star, and therefore young people like him no matter what. He can do whatever he wants. But I don't think that's the perception that millennials, and again, not all, even if it is the case, it's not all of them. I mean, the millennials are still a diverse group of people, and I don't want to box them all as single-minded. But I don't think that's the kind of thing about Franken that holds any appeal, if anything does, at this stage. I think the Democrats are making a mistake here. Now, having said that, I don't know if it's a mistake they will pay for. We often say, "Oops, that's a mistake." But if they don't pay for the mistake, then was it really? But it is obvious that the Democrats are going all out to save Al Franken. And Pelosi is going all out to save John Conyers. While at the same time, they are trying to destroy any Republican who finds himself ensnared in these types of allegations. The only Republican who finds himself so ensnared right now is Roy Moore. And whatever Roy Moore did was 40 years ago. The two accusers for Roy Moore basically describe incidents that happened 40 years ago. Al Franken's happened last week, last year, the last decade, or what have you. I have a story here from the Huffing and Puffington Post. Left-wing activist and contributor G.S. Potter. She is a community educator, a strategist, and advocate. She holds a Ph.D. from the University of Washington. She's the founder of something called a Strategic Institute for Intersectional Policy. You know what intersectional is? It is where feminism meets gay rights, where all these different left-wing isms meet, where they all intersect. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, WTF. That's an example of intersectionalism. And she is the founder of the Strategic Institute for Intersectional Policy. And she writes that Leanne Tweeden's claims kind of fall short because Leanne Tweeden was asking for it. Potter has declared that Leanne Tweeden, the first to accuse Franken, has not earned the right to claim she is a victim. Dr. Potter says that Tweeden is trying to use the traumas of the women and children that have been the true victims of sexual violence for the benefit of the Republican Party and for her own gain. Dr. Potter claims that Tweeden was never really a victim of assault by Al Franken and that she was effectively asking to be abused because of her participation in a USO comedy show. This is the Huffing and Puffington Post, and basically they're running a piece by this weirdo claiming that Leanne Tweeden was asking for it. Once she signed up to appear with Franken in a USO show, she was asking for whatever Franken did, and as such, none of it can be called abuse. None of it can be called harassment. And she basically was asking for it, and therefore she has no claim. And Franken is not guilty. Franken didn't do anything wrong. Franken was just being Franken. And she signed up to be in a show with Franken knowing full well who Franken is. So the left is pulling out all the stops to save Franken, much like they did with Bill Clinton. Now, for what reason? Well, there are probably many. But this is where I think they're making the mistake. Time will tell. And speaking of time, I've taken a brief break. We'll be back with much more before you know it, folks. Los Angeles Times yesterday had a really curious story about Robert Mueller and his reputation and how he hasn't earned it. This guy's made a lot of mistakes and he's lost a lot of cases. And it's a really curious piece. But I'm going to make sense of it for you, my friends, as we return after this brief obscene profit timeout here at the top of the hour. Don't go away.
Thank you so much for listening today. I know you probably have a lot on your plate, figuratively and literally. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving meal and hope the shopping's going well. I've just become spoiled. I cannot remember the last time I waited in a line to shop. just because of the website, the internet. It's just, but you see these people and they wait in line. It's a tradition for some people. No, I do not have a personal shopper, Bo. No. I was going to give you that opportunity today at 3. No, it's funny. My wife, she doesn't shop for me either. We collaborate with the kids online, and I'm not one of those guys where, honey, can you buy me a tie? I don't know how to shop for myself. I'm not like that. So, but the personal shopper is what? You send them to buy what you tell them, or they just buy what they think you want? Okay. See, what Bo's trying to do is he's trying to buy me this man dress that was online. It looks like a kilt. It looks like a suit and a kilt, right? Sort of. Yeah, I don't know why you want to do that, but but yet you won't take me out shopping today. So whatever. It's the Rush Limbaugh Show, 800-282-2882. I'm Ken Matthews filling in, and again, I just realized I'm allowed to say this. You can follow me on Facebook, Ken Matthews. I'm on Twitter. I've got about 30 people 30 people following me on Twitter. Once per show, but I never said it the last several shows. So if you're keeping track, the entire hour will be self-promotion. Just kidding. It won't be. Let's go to Pat. Pat in Alaska. Oh, my gosh. What's it like in Alaska?
It's cold and the wind's blowing.
Well, your phone's working.
Yeah, that's about all. I'm heating with wood and I'm about out.
Oh, jeez. Oh.
Hey, I just wanted to call and wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and thank the EIB Broadcasting Network for all the work you guys do.
Well, that's very nice of you to say.
You're like dessert on top of the Thanksgiving dinner, buddy, I tell you.
Wow.
All this stuff going on with these women coming out and accusing the men of all these things, these accusations, it's not going to help you ladies get a man. We're afraid to get in the elevator with you now anyway.
It's a great point. It's a great point. People are on edge.
Yeah.
You can't even compliment somebody. How do you even, we live in a world where if you say, wow, that, in fact, we had to have HR training. Okay, at my parent company, we had HR training, and there's a whole list of things you can't do anymore. Like you can't even say, you cannot risk saying, wow, that sweater looks great on you, because it might be misinterpreted. That's crazy.
I just look at it as that's the socialists turning our country around and trying to take what made this country great and get rid of it, and to the point that we can't even. The other day I was down to the store and an elderly lady walked up and I said, is it all right with you if I open the door and hold it for you? And she goes, oh, yes, sir. Thank you so much. It's glad to see a gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I wanted to ask first because I didn't want to offend you. I mean, it's got
think
to that
about
point.
It. Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's and I'm so glad you called, Pat. Have a wonderful Alaskan not Thanksgiving. It's over, but Black Friday. Heating with wood. I love heating with wood, though. Wow. We used to have one of those big wood stoves in our basement in North Carolina in the mountains, and my dad and I used to go out and cut wood, and it was such a manly thing. But then when you light that first fire of the season and it comes out of the chimney, doesn't it smell great? It just smells around the whole yard. It smells like a Norman Rockwell photo. Let's go to Fred. It is Fred, right? Rockford, Michigan. A lot of action in Michigan today. What's going on? Is there a revolution or something starting? What's happening?
No, we're just having a day off after Thanksgiving and listening to you.
Well, thrilled to hear it. Thank you so much.
Listen, I'm calling in response to one of your earlier callers in the subject of mortgage interest deductions in your taxes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those people that believes there should be no deductions. Let me decide how to spend my own money.
Agreed.
But I understand that doing away today with the mortgage deduction and property taxes could have an adverse effect on the housing industry. But I think there's a way around that, and the way around it is to let you any gains that you make on the sale of a piece of property that's your actual residence is not taxable. so that you now have a decision to make. Do I invest my money in stocks and pay tax on the gains, or do I do it in a house and get any gains tax-free? And I think that would spur the housing industry and overcome any adverse effects of losing the mortgage interest deduction.
I think that's a great suggestion and very well thought out. And what our caller mentioned before, Fred, and I did agree with this, if we are going to get rid of these deductions, they should be phased out because we don't want to traumatize or impede the current momentum that we're at, especially now with housing, because housing right now is the real estate market's on fire. But I do agree, the less deductions, the more control you have over your money, the less you're penalized when you make profit, the more the free market really works like a free market. It's not a free market if you make wise investments or you rehab homes and you're penalized if you succeed at it. Then it becomes partially free, you know?
Correct.
Well, thanks for calling, Fred. I hope you have a great weekend. Thanks again for listening to the Rush Limbaugh Show. 800-282-2882. America's anchor man on vacation. My name's Ken Matthews. Always fun to sit in. Got another Birmingham, Alabama call. Got to talk to Marianne and get an update. Got to get a Judge Roy Moore update for the third hour of the show. What's going on there, Marianne?
Hi, Ken. We in America are sitting on our hands waiting for our people like Steve Bannon to find the most conservative candidates that they can. But even if they're not conservative, when we get into the voting booth, we're going to pull the Republican handle because our president needs help. Our president needs help, and we're going to give him a veto-proof majority.
I like the way you think, Marianne, and isn't it true? It's so sad that we saw a guy that genuinely wants to drain the swamp, and and he doesn't have any hardcore party affiliation, and because of that, he's got two parties that are not behind him because they're worried about losing their power.
Well, as Rush says, mark my words, we're going to give him a majority-proof majority.
In Congress and Senate. Let me ask you before you go, Marianne.
Yeah.
Do you think Judge Moore will win in the special election?
Well, last Wednesday I heard on WERC, our local station, that Roy Moore's investigators had gone to the courthouse and found out that this 14-year-old's mother and daddy are divorced. And when she says the incident happened, she was living at her father's house 30 miles away from her mother. So she could not have been talking with him on the telephone.
So once again,
check it out.
Yeah.
I'm voting for Roy Moore.
Well, good for you, and I hope things go your way. You've got a good strategy there, and I appreciate the call. And this is a strategy of the left, and they've come right out and said it. It's always the severity of the allegation or the accusation, right, and not whether it's true or not. And it goes back to what we said at the top of the show today. All you have to do is say, put up on the CNN screen without any sound at a happy hour or at a bowling alley, people who don't really follow the news closely like Marianne or you, if you're listening to Rush Limbaugh, you see a little clip, 15-year-old girl says, or another 15-year-old girl claims Roy Moore did this. Now, all it is a claim, but it's a headline on a screen, and it will become the centerpiece of newscast for people like Charlie Rose, Chris Cuomo, Anderson Cooper, Joe Scarborough, and the rest of them. And then when the truth comes out, when the investigation is done, it's long after the usefulness of that to hurt someone's reputation. So if it comes out, like Marianne just said, the woman wasn't even in the same zip code, and I know that they're saying now it wasn't Roy's signature in the yearbook. Nobody cares about that. They're just keeping it alive. They just want to keep the momentum, the negative momentum, pointed at Judge Moore. We have more calls coming up on the Rush Limbaugh Show. Plus, I want to get to that because I find it so entertaining. And I don't go out of my way to pick on millennials because I know a lot of really smart, successful, talented, and believe it or not, conservative millennials. But when I see millennials saying they're having a midlife crisis, I really have to scratch my head. That's coming up. You know, Rush 24/7 gives you access to everything. It's a vast archive of radio excellence, and it's in text. So, for example, maybe you're at a dinner this weekend and you don't want to hear your liberal sister-in-law blab. You can just listen to Rush 24/7 on your iPhone. What do you think, Bo? I think it's a great idea. Check it out. It's all at rushlimbaugh.com, where you'll also find an opportunity to get that interview with Ed Klein with the Rush Limbaugh letter, which I have a copy of, by the way, which is very exciting. 800-282-2882. I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up. There's been another accusation against President Donald J. Trump. I'm sure it's all over CNN right now. Actor Billy Baldwin. Now, he's the middle one, right? Alec and then Billy and Stephen's. Yeah, Stephen is the really conservative one whose career is kind of And we all know Alec. Billy Baldwin claims Donald Trump hit on his wife during a ritzy hotel party in New York in 1992. Okay, so that's let's go with the time. 25 years ago, he blasted President Trump, calling him a black belt sexual harasser. Okay. He fired off the accusation Thanksgiving morning in response to the latest sexual harassment allegations against beleaguered Democrat Senator Al Franken. Okay, this is a good opportunity to break this down and make sure we understand the difference between someone being egotistical or braggadocious or just wanting to hit on women, not literally hit, but you know what I mean, pick up women, entertain women, interact with women, date women, whatever. There's a big difference. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if he was divorced at that time or not. I'm not sure if President Trump at the time was divorced. But again, this is what he says. He goes, your dad is a fifth-degree black belt when it comes to sexual impropriety allegations, he said to Donald Trump Jr. on his Twitter. In fact, I once had a party at the Plaza Hotel. Your dad showed up uninvited, hit on my wife, invited her on his helicopter to Atlantic City. Okay. All right. Is Billy going to be okay, or is he going to need... Apparently Billy's a liberal because that was a trigger. I'm telling you, holy crud, what's going on with that? So, exactly. Now, this is the absurdity, but this is where we're going with this, and this is not the same as you own a record company or you own a television network or a movie network, and you say, here's how it works. If you ever want a career, you're going to have to do this, and the girl's 19 and you're 40, and you just signed a deal to do a movie. That's a little different than, hey, your wife's pretty hot, or you're pretty hot. You want to fly in my helicopter? We'll go to Atlantic City. So I guess the question would be, Billy, what did you do other than nothing and then wait until 2017? What are you looking at me like that? Well, what are you looking at me like that for, Bo? That's the truth. You're telling me it took you 25 years to get up the courage to say, and then he said my wife was hot, and he wanted to take her on his helicopter. Well, here's an idea, champ. Get your own helicopter. What do you think about that? No, seriously. He didn't say the guy touched my wife this way or that way. Liberal men, you guys need to get a grip. I mean, figuratively. But you need to get a grip. This is absurd. But, again, listen to this. Look at the headline. This is in the New York Daily News. This is a mistake I make when I come to New York. I always watch CNN in the hotel, and I always read all the New York Daily News, and pretty much every New York Daily News and New York Post, they're all tabloids pretty much. But they're fun to read, and they're color, and they have a lot of pictures, which would be great for liberals, actually. So Billy Baldwin, that's it. See, I would be embarrassed. Trump came barging in and said, hey, let's get in my helicopter. Let's blow this party and get out of here, said one witness. Oh, my gosh. We need to call the feds on that. Oh, my God. Then they have a picture of the Plaza Hotel, which used to be owned by Trump, of course, and I think run by the second wife or by Ivanka, was it? I forget. I think Ivanka ran it. She did a pretty good job, too. Okay, here we go. When Trump realized, this is what Billy Baldwin said. When Trump realized it wasn't a raging Hollywood party with strippers hanging from the roof, he left with his tail between his legs. He was in the room for about 10 minutes. So let's just review, Billy, now that you've had the courage. Oh, my God. Somebody needs to hug Billy Baldwin today. He had the courage to come forward with this horrific story about how his wife, Donald Trump, 25 years ago, shows up at a party, is there for less than 10 minutes. During that time, he approaches Billy Baldwin's attractive wife and says, hey, let's blow this place. Get on a helicopter. We'll go to Atlantic City. I would imagine at that point, Billy Baldwin was crying. He needed to be comforted. But now, after 25 years, he's had the courage to make an accusation to deflect from Al Franken and the rest of them. Yeah, Mike said he's worked through it. But this is the absurdity. This is what one of our callers was talking about this earlier. This was the absurdity. Now, every single thing any man says to any woman, I forget the gentleman's name who called earlier, and he said, now you're afraid to get in an elevator alone with a woman. Yeah, he was from Alaska. Exactly. I mean, if I was from Alaska, I would get in an elevator with every woman just to stay warm based on what's going on up there. But when you think about it, this is where we are. But you see these headlines. Billy Baldwin accuses Trump of hitting on wife. And then you think it's going to be something awful, something Weinstein-like, something like Ted Kennedy running around with his pants around his ankles. He was a lion of the Senate. Did you know that? Yeah. That's the craziest thing. Look at the way I can't believe I'm beating up on the late Senator Ted Kennedy, but somebody has to. That he got a pass on his driving and his behavior with women. No one ever brings it up. And now I got to listen to Billy Baldwin whine about my president because he likes to fly chicks around in his helicopter 25 years ago. Gee whiz. More phone calls coming up on The Rush Limbaugh Show. The Rush Limbaugh Show, 800-282-2882. Thanks for listening on Black Friday 2017. Always a thrill to be here. And if you want to check out the new campaign button, I was creating this on the air, and then we had our talented, one of our web team members from the EIB Network, Dean, and his lovely niece, Teresa, actually make up the button and put it. It's on my Facebook page, Ken Matthews, at Ken Matthews. And it says, get out the grope, vote Democrat. And this probably will carry Joe Biden to victory. Because once people can just accept that, I can't believe no one did anything on the story about 2 weeks ago, and then we're gonna jump back on the phones because I know Luella's standing by. About 2 weeks ago, there was a report that came out from a former Secret Service employee and another person that also weighed in on it, and they said Joe Biden has a reputation for groping and touching and patting in a very uncomfortable way, and he would do that sometimes with female Secret Service agents. And the story went that at one point, when the detail was at the house, which is maintained and controlled by the Navy, it's a Naval Observatory, I believe, the Vice President's residence, and the men would make a wall. Like if there were two women on the detail, men would come over and kind of help out if Joe was just by himself, because he would do things like swim naked, get out of the shower completely naked. And now, see, those are the pictures that need to go viral right there. That Joe Biden getting out of the shower thing needs to go viral. You see, now here's the difference. When I get out of the shower, Bo, because Bo wanted to know, don't I shower naked? When I get out of the shower, all the Secret Service, they're not even in the same room. So none of them are even in the same room. They know better. But see, that's the thing. Think about that. Think about that. She would be in the living quarters. He would walk around naked. He would walk around naked. Hey, how you doing? Just kind of, you know. And when you think about that, when you think about the power that the vice president has over the Navy in that situation, because they're running part of it, and the Secret Service, think about that. Now, how is that? I have to be very careful here, but how is that different than any of some of these other Hollywood accusations where people go, oh, I went over to meet with him at his house and he answered the door naked? Now, how is that different if they change the shift, the security detail, Secret Service, and two women come on or a woman comes on and he answers the door naked? But he's the vice president, and nobody talks about this. Well, Chris Cuomo's afraid to, but there are some people that may. Who knows? Maybe Billy Baldwin. Was there a helicopter involved? Maybe he'll talk about it then. Let's go to, is that California? Is that Luella? Luella, how do you... Guillermo.
Yeah?
Yeah, I thought at first your name was Guillermo, but you're Luella from Guillermo. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. I just wanted to give a female perspective of this whole sexual harassment subject. And I'm past the half-century mark, so I've got a few years under my belt. But I think that 10% of the men are sexually harassing, assaulting, abusing 90% of the women. So it's not as widespread. I mean, in my personal experience, I've had a few situations myself. Mm-hmm. But most women just learn to let it roll off their back. I mean, during my time in the military, when we were referred to as walking mattresses, and after I got out of the military, I had 2 young kids, and I was working in manufacturing, and the supervisor there told me that I could make all the overtime I wanted. I didn't even have to be at work. I had to be at his house.
Oh, geez. And what was your response to him? What was your response to him?
I just kindly said, no, thank you. And I wanted to keep my job.
Mm-hmm. And so you,
so
but
I didn't
now,
say anything.
And nothing continued beyond that. He didn't go further.
Oh, he tried again, but
yeah,
but he didn't physically do anything.
Do you think that the younger generation of women do not have, what's the word I'm looking for? Because I don't want to, because I know.
Mental defenses.
Pardon?
Mental defenses.
Maybe that's it. That's a good word, yeah. Do they not have the wherewithal like the way you were raised, or my mother, and I'm not going to mention her age on the Rush Limbaugh show because then she's going to slap me because I mentioned it on my other shows once. But she's 70 plus, put it that way. And those women grew up with the boyfriend or the husband would either come over and knock your lights out if you mess with the woman, or the woman would. Or the woman would say, look, you do that again, I'm going to hit you in the head with a shoe.
One of my girlfriends, we were together in a park, and there was a situation that arose that some guy came over and, made some kind of insinuating sexual thing, and she threw a hot cup of coffee in his face.
Well, there you go. Well, see, I'm just wondering, I think men are, as we heard from Billy Baldwin's whining, men are not equipped to do what their number one job is. And I think the man's number one job, call me crazy, but I agree with Burgess Owens, who wrote that wonderful book called Liberalism. The man's number one job is to protect his family and to protect the women in his family and the children in his family. And I think we have many liberal men in particular not equipped. And I think we have women that are afraid to use the power that they have. You know, like you did.
That if you asked your next 10 female callers if they've ever had a situation in their life where they have been at least sexually harassed, 9 out of 10 will say yes.
Well, your statistic, and I know you were just, ballparking it, but what you said made a lot of sense, that 10 or 20% of the men are doing 90% of the harassing, and that's true.
Yes.
Most men...
Because most men I deal with, whether it's work, whether it's shopping, whether it's whatever, most men are gentlemen.
I would agree with that. And unfortunately, that has to be taught. And, if liberal and progressive academia has its way, they're going to make sure that none of that stuff is taught because they don't want you saying he or she or sir or ma'am. So it's just going to get more challenging and more confusing.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the call, Luella. Thank you so much for calling and your candor. And I would imagine people would agree with that. The thing that always shocks me, and that is you hear about some of these accusations. I always wonder, where is the man? Was there another man in the dynamic? When Harvey Weinstein was doing whatever, was there a man that could have come in and said or done something to Harvey? Now, there was a story, I don't know if you saw this, but Angelina Jolie, I guess, allegedly Harvey Weinstein gave her some trouble verbally or something, and Brad Pitt cornered him and basically set him straight. That's the story that's circulating. So right there, I'm thinking, wow, Brad Pitt doing what a man's supposed to do. And I often wonder, now obviously women are not going to tell, they may not tell you, they may be afraid to tell their husband. They may be afraid to tell their father or their boyfriend. But I do wonder what's happening to fathers and boyfriends and husbands in our culture, or if they're just being so defanged that if something like that were to happen to someone you care about, you've been trained to say, well, I guess we're just going to have to file a complaint. Because my dad would just pound your head in. But again, you can't do that, though. You're not allowed to pound people's head in anymore. Boy, that's a bummer, huh? 800-282-2882. It was a joke before you file a complaint. 800-282-2882. I'm Ken Matthews in for Rush Limbaugh. Coming right back. Oh, wow. We've got Pat in Brooksville, Florida on the Rush Limbaugh Show. My name's Ken Matthews, filling in for Rush. And I just saw the word Debbie Wasserman Schultz pop up, and my stomach became upset. What's it all about? Immediately, I started going, oh, my God, give me a search.
It's really great to talk to you today, Ken. I'm one of these people that can never listen to Rush live. So thank you for the Rush 24/7. Otherwise, I'd never hear about this stuff.
Oh, excellent.
Ever since I found out that Debbie Wasserman Schultz had these Pakistani family IT people out there, and I thought, oh, okay, maybe it wasn't the Russians. Maybe it was this Pakistani IT family, or maybe it's all connected somehow. Mm-hmm. But it's like completely gone away. We're not supposed to look at that right now. We're supposed to look at all these perverts in Congress or Hollywood, whatever. But we're not supposed to look at this, and it's driving me crazy.
Well, it's interesting that you brought that up, Pat, because if you look at some of the biggest stories of the last month, the horrible shooting in Vegas, the horrible church shooting in Texas, the recent terrorist attack in New York, look how quickly the news media sweeps them off center stage without even fully investigating it. We don't even have answers to those things yet. The media just sweeps it right off and goes back to what? Trump and Russia.
Never get any answers.
Yeah, Trump and Russia, Roy Moore and the teenagers, and they just sweep off one of the most.
And
yeah, go ahead.
When we try to say, well, there's nothing to Trump and Russia, they go right back to Trump and Russia. You know, it's like, they're just 100%. And if they're not talking about Trump and Russia, they're talking about climate change. and how we're all going to, burn up or whatever we're going to do.
Well, no, you're so right. They control the agenda, and that is the. I think that's why talk radio is successful, and the various news sources. I mean, think about the pre-talk radio and the pre-social media world. We basically had 3 networks, and they all told us what to believe. They told us who was good, who was bad. This is what the weather is. This is what this person believes, etc. And now I think the challenge is to make sure people have the sources to go to. Like you mentioned, Rush 24/7 coming up. That is such a source of information.
It's a lifesaver for me.
Yeah, that's something you want to share with friends. And also, check out the Limbaugh letter. That makes a great gift.
Yeah, I do the Limbaugh letter, too. It's the only way I can get decent information about what's really going on out there, because they all want you to look at whatever they want you to look at. And I love the fact that Rush told us all the time, don't group think.
Yeah.
If he finds himself group thinking, then he goes, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. I'm not seeing something or whatever, you know?
Very good. Very good observations, Pat. Thank you so much for calling, and all the best. Have a wonderful Christmas as well, because I know that's right around the corner. We can squeeze Jake in from Barstow, California. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. I just wanted to say real quickly, commenting on the Alabama elections. Personally, I never really cared about what was going on locally and who was running what, never even knew. But my viewpoint completely changed. We have got to stop any leftists or socialists trying to take over the country. And right now, if Bernie Sanders had been running instead of Hillary, that he might have won, reading that somewhere, that really scares the heck out of me now.
Well, and it should, and that's something else that, because of all the conflict and scandal, so little attention was really paid to Bernie's ideology, which was pure socialism. Pure socialism. And keep in mind, the unions, many supported Bernie. Think about all the people in the Democrat Party. Now, you know this, Jake, but a lot of people probably don't realize that until Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Hillary and the DNC started to railroad Bernie, he was getting momentum. And what scared me about that was he's a socialist. And how could he get momentum in the greatest country, the freest country, the most capitalist country in the world? And you hit the nail on the head. It's local. If we don't get more conservatives in positions where they can change the direction of legislature, like the Senate and the House, we're in trouble.
Before, I didn't care, whoever was running. The only thing that mattered to me was president and my senator and Congress. I didn't care whatsoever. And then a friend gave me a book and completely changed my viewpoint.
What was the book?
It's called Enemy of the People.
Who wrote that? You remember?
It's a Kindle book.
Okay. Enemy of the People. I'm going to look that up. That sounds interesting. I'm going to have to check that out. Well, I appreciate the call, Jake. Have a good Black Friday, the great remainder of your Thanksgiving weekend. It's the Rush Limbaugh Show. I'm Ken Matthews. A few seconds left, and we'll be right back. Thank you so much for listening to the show today. I forget how fun you make it. Rush Limbaugh Show, the greatest audience. Thank you so much. My name's Ken Matthews, and I want to quick shout-out. Bo said I can give quick shout-outs to my brother and his wife in North Carolina, and my family in New Jersey, my mom and dad in Florida, and everybody at the soup kitchen working with my mom. My mom's like a little mini celebrity now because she dropped that in the soup kitchen one day. Some guy was talking about Rush Limbaugh in a good way, as millions of people do, and she said, "Oh, I forgot to mention my son's filling in for Rush." So I'm going to go down there and, check it all out the next time I'm down there. Who else? Oh, yeah, sling some soup, exactly. And, of course, my beautiful family in Central PA, my wife and my 2 sons. I have this weekend off, which is very, very exciting. And, again, I encourage you to Shop, but do it after the crowds have dissipated. Have a safe holiday, and thanks again for listening.